Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to go over a Category 2 Hurricane Delta, which weakened to a Category 2 from a Category 4. It became the quickest storm to intensify from a tropical depression to a Category 4. I believe the previous record was somewhere around 48 hours. This one did it in just 32 hours. So a very interesting storm. It's also the earliest Delta named storm. So we only had one Delta before that in 2005, but this was definitely the earliest by over a month. We also have a potential landfall with parts of Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. This could be the sixth time that New Orleans was in the cone forecast from the National Hurricane Center just this year. So definitely a lot of different records being broken over parts of the for this hurricane season, and that is going to be continued. And I really want to know down in the comments, how many named storms do you think we'll end up with at the end of this hurricane season? Now, here to be the current National Weather Service page, we have red flag warnings, which are currently in effect for parts of northern Montana. We also see some air quality alerts scattered throughout parts of Wyoming, Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas, also for parts of California, and also Oregon and northern California. There we also see a large area of wind advisories and high wind warnings in effect for parts of much of upstate New York, southern Vermont, southern New Hampshire, southwestern Maine, as well as parts of eastern Massachusetts. You guys are under a high wind warning. The rest of Massachusetts under a wind advisory for the entire state of Connecticut and Rhode Island, as well as a little bit of northeastern New Jersey and Long Island. There also all under a wind advisory for this big system that's coming out of Canada, and it's going to be making its way into this part of the country. Now, we also have some storm surge warnings in those pinks. We have some hurricane warnings in the lighter pink or the hotter pink, and we also have tropical storm warnings, if I'm not mistaken, in effect for parts of Mississippi and Louisiana there. And offshore, we see all those tropical storm warnings, hurricane warnings, all of that further to the south in parts of the Gulf of Mexico. Now, let's start talking about your 5-day outlook, and then we'll go into Delta. This is the 5-day outlook. We have nothing upcoming in the eastern 2/3, maybe even 4/5 of the Atlantic, but for much of the Gulf of Mexico, you guys are on alert for Delta, which is currently in the or just over the Yucatan Peninsula right now. So here would be the current satellite imagery of the storm. We don't see a well-defined eye out of this, but it is just a big mass of cloud cover. Yesterday, if you looked at the satellite imagery, it was much more impressive than this, but you can start to tell kind of where the storm is located. Right around there is where it's located. It's currently 65 miles west-southwest of Cabo Catoche, Mexico. There, so excuse me for the pronunciation of that city name, but it is currently located at 21.4 degrees north by 88 degrees west, and it currently has sustained winds of 105 miles per hour, and it's moving northwest at a speed of about 17 miles per hour, minimum pressure of about 975 millbars as well. Here's the key messages for the storm. You can pause the video right here and read them if you are interested. Here is the cone forecast for the storm from the National Hurricane Center. It is expected to go back to a major hurricane, and something that has really caught my eye is that the National Hurricane Center now has this as a major hurricane, presumably all the way until landfall somewhere in between Texas and Louisiana there. And also something that caught my eye, it has shifted westward. This track yesterday, if you looked at yesterday's video, the track was somewhat like this, or at least that's what was forecasted for the storm. Now the storm is forecasted to move a little bit further to the west, and that's mainly based on the European ensemble models, which have really shifted to the west. Now, here is the current watches and warnings for this storm. We currently have hurricane warnings in effect in that red, tropical storm warnings flanking either side of that. We also have some hurricane watches in effect and tropical storm watches in effect for parts of Louisiana and Texas there. And I think the biggest impact, depending on exactly where this tracks, but right now the biggest impact looks to be for easternmost Texas and maybe southwestern Louisiana, maybe even south central Louisiana, kind of the same area that was impacted with Laura. Now, here would be the past wind field of the storm, and we really dodged a bullet here by this not making or not moving all the way through Cuba and Mexico. If it moved through this narrow area, we would probably be dealing with a Category 5 right now. Luckily, it made landfall, and although landfall doesn't sound like the best thing to happen, it is still very good for the storm. It has weakened the storm significantly. It went from a Category 4 to a Category 2, so landfall can actually help these storms weaken quite a lot, and that can actually be a good thing for these storms to undergo. Now, here would be your model track guidance for the storm, and most of the models now over parts of south central Louisiana or into southwestern Louisiana, depending on the exact track. Now, here would be the GFS ensemble model. And most of these models bring us over southwestern or south central Louisiana. And then here's the Canadian model, ensemble model, and we're looking at much of south central Louisiana, looking like it's going to be the main landfall area. Now, here would be the model intensity guidance, and you might have noticed yesterday we had a couple models bring this to Category 5. Because of that rapid weakening it underwent, it is now a Category 2, almost a Category 3, and it does look like it will strengthen back to a major Category 3 hurricane before making landfall with Louisiana and then presumably going back down to a tropical storm and then a tropical depression or post-tropical storm. Now, here would be your wind speed probabilities for tropical storm force winds, and we're looking at near 100% chance there for southern Louisiana. For southern Louisiana, we also have a 40 to 50% chance of hurricane force wind speeds, and that'll go up with time. Now, here would be your rainfall forecast zoomed in over parts of Louisiana and Mississippi and Arkansas. In that general region, we have some isolated pockets of 6 to 10 inches. If we actually zoom out here, this is the Weather Prediction Center's 7-day rainfall forecast, and you can tell where they think this is going to track. They think a track somewhat like this is likely, and then a track into parts of the northeast is likely. As it moves basically past Tennessee, Arkansas, that's when I think it'll start becoming extra tropical, and you won't really have too strong of winds. But what the main thing that's going to come out of this is going to be the rain, especially for parts of the Tennessee valleys and also into the northeast. That's where I think most of your rain for the week is going to come from, for parts of Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, Arkansas, even western Tennessee. I think the biggest threat is going to be a combination of rainfall and storm surge along the coast, as well as some pretty high wind speeds over the next few days. Now, here's your storm surge graphic from the National Hurricane Center, and they are putting some areas up to 11 feet of storm surge over south central Louisiana. And as you get further to the west or as you get further to the east, those amounts start to really go down. But we do see generally anywhere between 7 and 11 feet for parts of south central Louisiana. As you get to western Louisiana and into parts of eastern Texas, probably right around 1 to 4 feet. And the same there as you get into Mississippi, Alabama, and the easternmost parts of Louisiana there. So here is the current sea surface temperatures, and this is going to be really the main thing that's going to slow the system down. The only really inhibiting factor, a little bit of wind shear, and also these very cool sea surface temperatures over the Gulf of Mexico. Now, for this time of year, these are actually below normal over this part of the Gulf of Mexico, and we'll show you the anomaly map in just one second, but it has been going over these very warm Caribbean waters, which have been untapped this entire hurricane season. There has really been no storms that have impacted the northwestern Caribbean, and now that now that Delta moved throughout this region, it is now able to use up that really warm water. It used it up, and now it's going to be moving somewhat like this. And so now we have those cooler waters in the path of the storm, and we have waters that are near 80 to maybe 80, 85, right around that ballpark, and we're looking at cooler water. So it's going from near 90, 91, 92 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 to 83, maybe 84 or 85 degrees, and as you get closer to the coast, maybe even in the upper 70s. So that is not very conducive for tropical storm development or hurricane development. Here's your anomalies, and we're looking at well below normal over parts of the Gulf of Mexico, and that's because of those big cool cool downs that have been moving into parts of the eastern U.S., and that has really been cooling down the Gulf of Mexico waters. The Caribbean water is still above normal, but it's not in the Caribbean anymore. It's now over to the Yucatan Peninsula, and it'll eventually be moving into parts of the Gulf of Mexico. And if we actually look at a model projection of this. This is what the sea surface temperatures are going to look like before Delta moves through. This is according to the HWRF sea surface temperature map, and this is a forecast. So this would be by early tomorrow, and we're looking at those sea surface temperatures over parts of the northern Gulf of Mexico, fairly warm, still able to support some sort of storm, maybe not develop it, but at least support it. And then if we look at after the storm has moved through, you can really tell where it went through, where you can see some much cooler values, especially south and basically draw a line south of Louisiana. You can tell where the storm really moved through, and you don't even have to know where the storm moved through. You can make a path right like this through those cooler sea surface temperatures, and that is Delta upwelling these cooler waters from underneath the storm. And as it upwells those cooler waters, it's also using those cooler waters, and those cooler waters don't have as much energy, and that really is what's slowing down these storms. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.